when our will meets with opposition, we often get cast into the pits. If we keep colliding will against opposition, the pit gets deeper and deeper. We don't want that to happen. What's the pit like? Well, the pit is a very painful place. It is a place that can be filled with blame, discontent, and oh, so much story. All because our will, what we want to do, has been thwarted. Getting out of the pit using what I call the self, the willful self, is very, very difficult. However, there is a choice. There is also the wise self. And if we end up in the pit too often, we will finally come to our senses and go, something's wrong with this picture. What is it that I can do differently? What we can do that's different is go into a quiet space and listen for that inner self, the wise self, and what it might have to say. Typically, the wise self will come up with some pain-free solutions, believe it or not. First of all, by asking us to become non-attached. We are so attached to outcome. We want it a certain way. There's a right way and a wrong way. There's my way and the other way. And with non-attachment, there's a sense of, well, let's see what way works. And this is really quite a relief. Second, this wise self tends to be very humble. It's not all puffed up with self-importance. Instead, it has a sense of treating each individual in this situation with the same degree of respect. In fact, there is a respect for the entire process. And that respect for the process is going to help us get out of the pits. So, what's the turning point here? The turning point is to see oneself differently. Actually, all of what's going on in our life is a mirror. The people that we come in contact with often mirror our attitudes. For example, if you're feeling quite unpleasant, you are in a bad mood, chances are you're going to find lots of people in your life on this particular day who reflect bad mood. And you go, oh, well, everybody's in a bad mood, so I should be too. What's happening here is you're in a bad mood, and this is what's coming back to you. It's actually called karma. Karma is simply a universal law that whatever action goes out invites an equal and the same reaction back. So what goes around comes around. It's simple. There's nothing metaphysical, magical, or mumbo-jumbo about karma. It's simply that what you put out in the world will come around and come back to you. Why? Well, what better way to get feedback on how effective your attitudes and your work habits and your emotional responses can be? It is a wonderful mirror for how we are received. So let's take this one step farther. One way of being in the pits is when you are dealing with an enemy. Now, an enemy can be another person. It can be a condition. It can be an attitude. Typically, an enemy is often oneself. And the more you resist that enemy, the more you place negative interpretations on what that enemy is doing, the stronger the enemy becomes. Resistance, and we're talking about karma now, resistance creates what? more resistance. What if you looked at the enemy and recognized that you were faced with a master teacher? That this person or this condition or this event is here to teach you how much more harmonious you can become, how much more capable you can be. Then the enemy no longer has a negative charge. We've removed the charge, we've removed the resistance, and in its place, we have placed respect. And again, it is that respect for life, for the process, which brings us out of the pits. This is a good thing. Now, to go with this commentary, I'm going to share an exercise with you in which you will be able to find beauty in the darkness. In order to do this particular activity, I would recommend that you go to the art store or stationery store and buy a very light piece of black paper. It's firm enough that I don't need a surface underneath it. I like using colored pencils. They are clean and I can control them. Something else that works on the surface, though, is colored chalk, particularly the oil pastels. So that is an option. If you happen to have paint, working with paint is wonderful too. What doesn't work, and I tried that out, are crayons. They're too waxy and they don't cover over the blackness well enough. So we're going to work with colored pencils today. And the first thing I would like to mention in terms of technical issues is that sometimes you have to create a white surface on the black before you put layers of color over the top. It's not always necessary, but if you want the light color to pop, then doing 2 coats, white and then color, works. Now, in case you're worried that you are not, let's say, an artistic genius and the idea of doing a color drawing is a little scary for you, please set those concerns aside, because I'm going to recommend or suggest that we work with 5 simple shapes. Actually, the shapes are filled with meaning, and I'll share that with you as we go. I'm going to start in the middle of my black surface here. Now, I'm using a circle. Circles are symbolic of the self. You know, our life is all about us. My life is all about me, and the work that I do and the turning point that we experience is to help us become more self-confident and more self-aware. The circle is about self, it's about wholeness, and it's about that wonderful sense of unity, connectedness. Now, you can use any shape that you want. I mean, you could fill this with a color. I am going to fill it with hearts because my theme right now in my own life is showing up and living life wholeheartedly. So I'm just drawing pictures of heart in the middle of my circle. You don't have to just depend on drawing. If you wanted to, you might have stickers or photographs or other images that you thought you would prefer putting on your drawing. But we do want to be able to see the darkness and the light that comes out of that darkness. Okay, so here's my circle. That's me. Here are the hearts. That's my theme, living life wholeheartedly. What do I want to do next? Well, I think what I'm going to do next is move into the shape of a square, or if it's slightly skewed, it then becomes a diamond. But either way, this symbol represents foundation and security. In order to pursue our work, in order to face the things that we face when we're involved in a turning point, somehow we need to feel secure or find a way to develop a feeling of foundation or security. The square, think of the square as the foundation of a building, 4 corners. 4 is a magic number in northeast, southwest, a 4-fold way. There are many times when the number 4 comes up, and it's really about covering all the bases in a balanced way. Now, if you decide that you want to fill in some of these shapes instead of just having them outlined as I'm doing here, then feel free to get your colored pencil or your pastel and begin to fill the shapes in. Now, you can take as long as you want to do this process. In fact, the longer you take, the more soothing this becomes. After all, it is a process of, let's say, coming to peace with something that seems perhaps dark and threatening in your life. And it's also a time of slipping into peace of mind. When we go into drawing, color, creativity, writing poetry, that's not really mental stuff. It becomes creative. It's spontaneous. Spontaneity, rather than analysis, can be very, very helpful in finding the benefit of what's going on in the darkness. Well, beyond the circle and beyond the square, and by the way, there can be so much more here, but I'm going to keep it fairly simple and straightforward. We also have triangle. Now, triangles are wonderful. They are symbolic of vision. They are symbolic of dream. What more can I say about triangles? They, as the square, are also a very strong shape. If you think about bridges, oftentimes bridges are engineered around the strength of triangles to buttress them. So bridging, that's kind of an interesting thing too. You could think of your triangles, if you choose to use them, as bridging between your physical world and your dream world. So you can begin to work with triangles. And obviously you can do more than what I'm doing here with triangles. Let me change my color. You can repeat and allow the design to expand beyond just the center line here. It's up to you to, again, be spontaneous and let the process lead you. It's not about making something pretty. It's not about right and wrong, because that's not what's involved here. It's simply getting into the process and allowing something wonderful to come out of the darkness. Now, as we continue on, we've worked with the triangle, and that is about vision and goals and dreams. And then after that, we have something else, which would be the spiral. You know, the spiral is all about growth. Something starts small and it opens up. It's a little circle and it gets bigger and bigger and can go on forever. So the spiral shape, which we see in nature all the time, is really about this filling out, evolving, and growing. Maybe you decide you want spirals all over your drawing. If so, Go for it. Go for what draws you right now, because this is the language of, language of spirit. This is the language of spontaneity and intuitiveness. It's good to tune into that because it often helps you find your way in the dark. Well, we have one shape left that is a universal symbol and has a great deal of meaning, and that is the equal armed cross. Now, this represents integration. It represents an understanding of time and space, of spirit and matter. It's an embracing of relationship, one thing to another. And relationships, even though they may not seem that way, are always with equals. And so this equal armed cross is a wonderful example of relationship. These shapes that we're working with here can become much more elaborate if you choose. For example, I could put equal arm crosses inside, and notice then it becomes, well, interestingly enough, it starts to turn into being a square. And you begin to see how one shape supports another. All of this is having fun with color, having fun with light, bringing color and light out of the darkness. Now, if I piqued your interest when I talked about these shapes, here's a favorite book of mine, Signs of Life by Angeles Arian. My book is kind of worn. As you can see, the pages are actually falling out. But it's going to tell you in great detail what these 5 signs are and what they mean. So if you're curious, this would be a nice thing to add to your library. When you are faced with a turning point, there are times when you just have to show up, get out there, and do the work. And there are other times when you need to come inside and address the work from a place of, I don't know what's going on here, I'm in the dark. And you open yourself up and see what comes out of that darkness, because it is equally valuable in your journey. Enjoy.